Let's jump into our New Zealand story for tonight. Paul Goldsmith. As I said, this interview was fascinating. There was a lot going on there. We're not going to have time to get to all of it. The whole second half of it is about the media, which was really interesting. You should go and check it out. Let's just have a look at this clip. They're now talking about. They've already talked about. I'll give Paul Goldsmith some credit, yeah, because he kind of threw Jack Tame at the start of this conversation, because they were talking about deterrence. Deterrence and crime, deterrence, sentence deterrence. And Paul Goldsmith just went, no, this is not a deterrent. That's not why we're putting this in. We're not putting it in as a deterrent. We're putting it in to keep the most serious offenders off the street for as long as possible. And, I think it's terrible policy, but again, it's one of these moments you've got to kind of give it to Paul Goldsmith that actually you could see there was a whole line of questioning from Jack Tame that just took the legs out from under, because straight away he just went, it's not about being a deterrent. It's about punishing people. And I mean, like, it's terrible policy, but when he gives a really straight, clear answer, because, you want him to fall into, yes, of course it's a deterrent. Then you bring the research out and it says, no, this is not a deterrent. But he just says, no, it's not a deterrent. It's about punishing people. You're like, oh, gosh, okay, at least you're being honest about it. So they talked about that. They talked about 3 strikes, what would be good, what wouldn't be good. Also in this, he talks about the new 3 strikes law has got a higher threshold before hitting those strikes. And they said in this, one of the reasons they've done that sort of watering down 3 strikes is they don't want to make it so hard that when Labor gets in, they just boot it out again. So they've actually gone in their heads, what would work under a Labor government as well. Now, again, I'm not supporting this policy, but you can see they've gone through a process to get there, and they're making it a higher bar to get hit with a strike, hopefully in their books, so that when Labor gets back in 3, 6, 9, 12 years, whatever it is, when Labor gets back in, it'll be high enough bar to not impact people for stealing a loaf of bread, but a low enough bar to put the most serious offenders away for longer. I'm giving you National's position, not the position of this show. Fair, Chewy?
You heard it here first. Pat is down for throwing kids in jail forever.
So this part of the conversation, they've gone on to talking about, the time one spends in prison, does that lead to greater reoffending, how long you spend in prison?
Would you agree that the longer someone spends in prison, the likelier they are to reoffend once they're reintroduced to society?
Well, look, it's an age-old challenge of trying to rehabilitate.
So would you agree
prisoners.
with that?
Well, not always. Sometimes people are succceusly rehabilitated in prison.
Sometimes they are.
Yeah, but it's hard work. It's very hard work.
So is the plan under 3 strikes to lock people up for their entire natural life?
No, but...
so these people will re-enter society at some point?
Eventually, but people are at their worst in terms of violent crime when they're young males, basically.
Right.
And the older they get, the more likely they are to not be quite as violent. But you also have the opportunity to do rehabilitation. And a big part of our justice approach actually is to put more resources into more effective rehabilitation, particularly for that group of remand prisoners, about half the prisoners who haven't yet been sentenced. So, that's a very much part of our plan. Because I think people sometimes think, if we're trying to reduce the number of victims of crime, the starting point is to increase the chances of being caught and held to account. Yes, that's part of it. But it's not the only part of our justice response.
No, it's not.
And the broader thing is, how do you deal with the broader social context as well?
Yeah.
So point number 1, Joe, we said last week, you have to be careful with this government because they use very safe sounding words, very balanced sounding words. Everyone needs to be equal. But the underlying policy behind that is incredibly dangerous. Oh, let's have a referendum on the principles of the treaty. The words he's using, Chewy, they sound reasonable and they sound thought out, but I don't trust them at all. I just don't trust them. There's been enough that they've gotten wrong and that they've overtly lied about or gone against what they said. I just don't trust them. I just don't trust them. That's my unease with this.
That was a good set of answers. That was excellently well done. And if they realise what they have there, which I'm sure they have, by pivoting to it's about having less victims of crime.
Yeah.
That is unfortunately a winner.
They got asked in this interview, he said, Jack made some really interesting points, which is like one of the points he made, and I'm just going to, or maybe actually we're going to show that, so I'll leave that out. But he asked about the numbers in gangs. What will be the target for you guys? You say there's too many. You say the numbers. What will be the target? And he wouldn't give that. And he said, our targets are aimed at youth offending and the fewer numbers of victims of crime. So that he wouldn't commit to how many gang members will there be, when you finish this term, because that's a really easy trackable number, so they say. But he wouldn't commit to that because he said all they've announced is about, fewer victims of crime and youth crime, the areas that they've given kind of guarantees for. The next part of the conversation I think is particularly interesting because they talk about taking the background of someone who is being sentenced into account. It used to be known as Section 27 and the background checks, and this government's canning them, even though Paul Goldsmith says, of course, you have to take into account the backgrounds of someone when sentencing. So it's like he's saying, you need to take into account, but we're getting rid of the way you take into account. And what it feels like in this clip, more so than any others, which is why I want to play it, is it's only Chewy. It's only about the money. It's only about the money. This will save money. This will save money. This will save money. How much? Don't know. This will save money. What about the research that says it might cost more? Maybe, but this will save money. So this is one of those instances where the research is literally thrown out, baby with the bathwater, and they want to save $1.50 so they can put it elsewhere. Likely tax breaks and landlords, perhaps.
As well.
Yeah. Do you reckon that a criminal's background impacts their likelihood of offending?
What do you mean by that?
Do you think people from bad backgrounds are more likely to offend?
Probably.
That, what do you mean by that? Just so we're clear, that what do you mean by that? That was like, oh crap, where are we going with this? Hang on, where, because in his head he's kind of already going, if I say, that's why there's that pause there.
What do you mean by that?
Do you think people from bad backgrounds are more likely to offend?
Probably, yes.
Yeah. So to what extent should someone's background factor in a court sentence?
Well, it's definitely part of the Sentencing Act that judges have always been able to take stock of the background for people, and that's an important part of it. But fundamentally, it's never an excuse.
No.
Ultimately, no society can function if people aren't held personally.
Said nobody ever anywhere, Chewy.
You've scrapped legal aid funding for those Section 27 background reports. Do you have official advice that will save money?
Yes, it's intended to save money, and we're going to
It's
put that
intended
money.
to. Do you have official advice that says it will save money?
We've got official advice that says we'll have to find out exactly how much it saves, because the justice system is complex, and so defence lawyers can act in different ways and try and pull different figures. So how much it saves is not precisely clear yet.
Okay,
but it will
so
save
just to
some
be
money.
totally clear, do you have official advice that says scrapping Section 27 background reports will save money?
Yeah, it'll save some money. Just how much? Do
you have specific advice that says it will?
Yes, I think so. I mean,
you think so?
There's clearly been that the idea there is that if you're not funding those reports, what happened is that if you look at the graph, it's like an exponential rise where it started off about 6 years ago.
Money.
Where
Money.
They started funding these reports.
Only about
went
money.
Up to $6 million a year. If we hadn't have changed, it probably would have been about $8 or $9 million a year.
So what he's basically saying is it's costing $6 million. It's going to cost $9 million. At no point does he go, is that a good use of this money? They just go, 6 million too much, and it's increased too much. 6 million too much, increased too much, so we're getting rid of it. It's like, okay, well, was it working though? If you've just admitted, Mr. Goldsmith, that actually a background of an offender should be considered when it comes to sentencing, and you're getting rid of one of the tools about figuring out what the background is when it comes to sentencing, what there? Well, cost too much. It was costing too much, too many people, costing too much. That's it. That's the depth of the answer.
Yeah.
And we certainly won't be spending that much on the alternative proposals.
Well,
so we will definitely save money.
Yeah, my question is if you have official advice to that extent.
It'll save money, we don't know how much.
So a briefing from your officials obtained by Newsroom in December suggested actually scrapping these reports could ultimately result in higher costs for the taxpayer. Quote, there may be new costs resulting from an increase in judicial requests for taxpayer-funded reports addressing matters that could have been provided in a Section 27 report. So, for example, expanded probation reports.
And look...
So you accept that your advice actually says that this could ultimately cost taxpayers more?
No, I don't think it will. The good thing
you don't think it will, but do you accept that that's what the advice says?
Well, look, our officials come up with all sorts of permutations and possibilities, but fundamentally, it's about stopping what was a runaway train in terms of a cottage industry.
So you're saying it's just about the costs increasing. We're stopping the costs increasing. At no point does he say we're stopping it because it wasn't working. At no point was he saying we're stopping it to do something better that's going to work better. It's only the money, Chewy. At no point is this conversation from Goldsmith floated to the area of was it working in the sentencing or not. If it's costing $8 and it wasn't working, get rid of it. If it was costing $8 million and it was working amazingly, then keep it. Then this is the short-term thinking you keep talking about that they're doing right here in real time, live on television, when the only thing that they're trying to do is save money. They're not looking for a better, Mr. Luxon, outcome. They're looking to save money, and that's where they draw a line. Save money, stop. What if it ends up being worse? Save money. What if it costs you more? Well, that might happen, but right now, today, save money. And that's it. No more. No more. This
They
is
know the cost, but
this
not
has
the value.
Yeah, there you go. 30 seconds to go.
Costing more and more and more, and you had these people sort of cultural reports are us
But as a
effectively going out there and
as a taxpayer, this potentially could cost me more.
No,
if your
I don't
justice
think so.
officials are right.
The I don't think so is carrying a lot of water, just quietly.
In all their reports, they come out with this. There's a potential risk that this could happen. There's a potential risk that this could happen.
Well,
but
I've asked you for any official advice that says it'll save money, and you haven't provided that this morning.
I haven't got a piece of paper in front of me that says that, but I'm confident that it will save money.
So I think it will. I'm confident it will. I think it will. Chewy, I've interrupted that several times. You're welcome to jump in now, sir.
Vibes. I also love Jack Tame's so good at this, right?
Yeah.
Here's a series of questions. Please speak to it.
Yeah.
Here's
what
the piece of
research.
paper.
Yeah.
Do you, Mr. Paul Goldsmith, recognize that this piece of paper exists? Look, it's like this, Jack. The paper could be there, or it might not be. I don't think that it is. Jack Tames holds up the piece of paper and goes, but here it is. We can all see it.
Yeah.
So in one interview, I've gone, oh shit, Paul Goldsmith's got his talking points in order. And this one's actually a pretty good one.
Yeah.
to absolutely shitting the bed in one interview. Fantastic.
Well, and that's kind of continue a little bit because Jack asks a really, really good question, good logic line here. And it's basically, if this government is doing all these things, whatever it is, gang patches, Section 27 going away, boot camps, all these things, then why do we need to prepare for the prison population going up? Because if you've got this all solved, why do we need to put more people in prison if you're solving crime? If you're solving retail crime, talking about it with your advisory group, why do we need to increase prison beds? Now, one could say that you want to increase prison beds because there might be a funder or an agency that you are representing behind your ministerial veil, so to speak. But surely the idea of good policy around crime is for less crime to happen. If less crime happens, then fewer beds are needed in prison. The two things don't seem to be logically connected. So let's have a listen to that.
Violent and sexual offenders.
The problem is that New Zealand has really high recidivism rates, right? So ultimately, unless you're going to hold these offenders in prison forever, there's a very high likelihood that once they are released from prison, even if they've been in there longer than they might have been under previous governments or previous regimes, they are very likely to reoffend. So we as the public are basically delaying the likelihood of further crimes.
Yeah, and so it's a challenging issue. The alternative, of course, is to say, well, we'll give up, it's all too hard, and we'll just let them out.
The alternative, that is not the alternative.
That doesn't work very well either, and we've tried that experiment the last 6 years, which is to say we'll reduce the prison population irrespective of what's going on. And we're seeing an increase in violent crime, and people are very concerned about crime in their neighbourhoods.
So according to police, the number of gang members under the National Gangs List, which I know is a controversial list, continues to increase and continued to increase in the first 3 months of your government. So as a government that is absolutely laser focused on targets,
yes,
do you have an official target for gang numbers at the end of this parliamentary term?
Well, we want to know the two primary targets that we're working to is to reduce the number of victims of crime, and secondly to reduce the number of serious repeat youth offenders. They're the two published targets.
But I mean, that's a very measurable...
And yes, we would expect the gang members to go down. I would make the point, though, yes, and I've been out to many public meetings, particularly in the retail space, people are very impatient. They want to see change. They want to see it right now. Now, we're not going to be back in budget surplus in 6 months. It's going to take years. We're not going to solve the education problems in 6 months. We're not going to solve the health problems in 6 months. We're not going to have law and order restored in 6 months. It takes time, and it's about change.
Maybe about halfway through the next Labor term. Just thinking, maybe those things will get sorted out, especially the surplus one, perhaps.
Changing the settings, and that's what we're doing. We're changing the settings, and we're confident over time that'll lead to a safer New Zealand.
Big changes coming in the gang space, though. So if the number of gang members, as per your official numbers in February of this year, 8,367 in February of this year. So by the end of this parliamentary term, in another 2.5 years.
We want that number down, and I'm not going to give you a precise number, but it's going to be down. Well, I don't know exactly.
I mean, yours is the government of targets,
We're going to make it very difficult and uncomfortable to be a gang member. They're going to ban the gang patches in public. We're going to give police extra powers. We're going to do all these things
to make
their life very difficult.
It's the government that loves targets.
We haven't set a specific target in that space. Our target that we're really focused on is reducing the number of victims of crime. That's one factor in it, reducing the prevalence and intimidation of gangs in public, and that's going to part of it feed on it. But the real focus is to reduce the number of victims of crime. That's what really matters.
There you go. Chewy wasn't quite the same setup that I said it was going to be, so I've messed up my notes. But I wanted to play that clip anyway. There you go. Thoughts around, I guess the justice system under the national lead government.
Have you seen that video of a raccoon trying to wash some candy floss?
I have, and it all disappears.
And it just disappears, and he's like, "Oh shit, where's it gone?" That was Goldsmith just there wondering where his candy floss had gone, because it was all so easy. And then, oh, do you have any numbers in mind? No, we don't. Let me try and get my candy floss back here, team. Just doesn't work. Yeah, like this. Here he goes. We're going to get tough on gangs. Jack asks him, what numbers? Oh, fuck. Just gone. It's going to be less. Based on what? Nothing. Based on nothing. And once again, there was an opportunity to explain and give people context why we know how many gang members there are now and why it's gone up so much in the last few years. Because we never counted them. It was various police districts just taking a stab at it rather than a methodical count of what makes a gang member and how many there are of them. It gives no context to the fact that Australia is just going, this guy's got too many parking tickets. He's born in New Zealand. Let's fucking get rid of him. No family, no support. You'll be fine. Join a gang. None of it. No context given. And look, this kind of ties into an article that I saw yesterday, where I think every town in New Zealand would have noticed something very interesting happening over the past couple of months. Put your hand up if you've seen police foot patrols in CBD areas. That's good, right? They're getting back to the basics of policing. They're cracking down and just being visible to stop retail crime. The article I saw was that it's coming at the expense of one particular facet: family harm. Too manpower intensive. They can't do both things. So we're getting police foot patrols and we're not looking at domestic violence as much. Isn't it good that New Zealand has such great stats on domestic violence?